Do you have features?
That open mic, I had taken it over from someone else and it did not have features. However, open mic readers, when they would come, unlike things that are in Chicago, you can read 3 pieces, but it could be upwards of 10 minutes if you have the 3 pieces. So they're like mini features of even though they're 3 pieces, you've got a lot of time to be able to do, your own thing there.
Sure.
They also allowed music, so if people come with an acoustic guitar, it is at a public library and a bookstore that's affiliated with the library. So it is, there can be children there, so it is a G-rated.
Right, gotcha.
In the middle of the day on a Sunday,
gotcha.
exactly. Yeah. Every once in a while, somebody would do something like that. Well, this is G-rated. There are children around, so you have to be careful for that. But
sure.
But otherwise, it is just a chance to share stuff and go round robin and enjoy sharing poetry.
Good. Yeah, sounds great. Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got a message from another artist telling me I'm welcome to bring a poem.
A poem.
A poem.
One.
A poem to read tomorrow. And I'm like, do I really want to go? I'm just going to read one poem.
Well, it depends. It always depends on, like, is there a time limit or what? Can you?
What good point.
Because
I didn't think about that. I think I could just riff. Right?
I think one of my best pieces is an over 5-minute long poem. So I'm like, all right, I'll do one. You said one. Here it is. I've edited that down, and actually, they had a slam during a festival a couple years ago, and I was a guest host for it. And I said, is it okay if I compete? If I will not take a prize if I'm in the thing, but can I be one of the readers? Sure. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to pick the one poem that I said was over 5 minutes long, but you're not allowed to have 5 minutes. So you say 3 minutes. I'm like, all right, I'll cut this first, I'll cut this first. And I've got a little timer on my smartphone, and I go through this thing of pow, and I would have taken 3rd place in the thing, but I couldn't, so it goes to somebody else for it. But yeah, you can, if you wanted to, you could pull stuff off. If you
wow, wow, oh, you're so creative. That's really good approach. Thank you.
And I don't know, well, I suppose if you wanted to, I was looking through poems for here to read for you, and I picked a bunch of short ones because I didn't know how much time I could share with the lovely audiences at WZRD. I didn't know, yeah. But one time when I had come here, and I was here earlier in the month, and I went to the open mic that I used to host, that is now run by Dave Getchuk, Poetry at the Gallery Cabaret, every other Tuesday, and I was a feature there in August, and I started that show, and I did a feature for Beach Post in a bonus week that was on September 1st. I needed music for that, sorry. And I started with that piece as well, and I believe that is one of the, I had written this poem because you had said I'm prolific. Oh boy.
So true.
Well, I oftentimes I'm not, but I decided in the end of 2018 that I would, for 2019, write a poem every day of the new year.
That's a challenge. That's a challenge.
I hope you could hear my breath from that, because that's a challenge. Yeah, it really is. So I started looking, like, what on earth can I write about today? And so I started looking at things for, like, holidays. Well, what crazy holiday is going on today? Hey, it's National Sword Swallowing Day, and so I'd write a piece about that. And I started writing so many pieces that I thought maybe I'd be able to put them together in an every event of the year kind of calendar, a book, a big massive book like this. And after half a year, I'd already gone through over 200 pages, and my husband suggested to me, like, work with Scars Publications, maybe make them 2 volumes. So we've just released, Scars Publications released every event of the year, volume 1, January through June. It has such a nifty little cover.
Yes, it is.
And it looks like it's leather, and the vegetarian in me says, well, it's not really leather, but it just looks like a nice old cover on this book. But so I would have events and things related to different events of the year. And when I was waiting for John on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, I wrote a piece for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And I don't know if you would happen to remember, when I was talking about the one poem that I think is really good and I cut it down to 3 minutes, it was an older piece of mine called Death Takes Many Forms. times. And it is about somebody dying who had diabetes. And it's a very long, drawn-out piece. I won't dare repeat it now, but it is an older piece, and I think it is one of my better to best pieces I've ever written. And after John heard this poem that I had written in January, he's like, I think this is on par with that. I think that's
Wow.
like, really? Really? You do?
Nice.
He's like, you use the repetition of, the house inside of me, and I'm like, yeah, I do. Instead of saying certain phrases, I do that kind of stuff, which I didn't even think of. So sometimes I strike gold when I'm writing that often. I guess. I hope. A girl can only hope.
Yes. It's good. It's like oiling the wheels. You got to keep those wheels moving.
And I was comforted because I've read it, and everywhere I've read it, people of African American descent would actually pull over and be like, "That was really good."
Nice.
And I'm like, I'm grateful because I'm trying to do something that would work for people, and I don't want to step on toes or overstep bounds or anything like that. And
sure.
So, I don't know if you've got the time. If you would
of course, yeah, let's hear it.
She says, okay, of course. And that's a comforting thing about these two books that I had just released. I mentioned at the beginning the Pharaoh Memes book, and I also just recently mentioned the Every Event of the Year book. The poem, I put it in both.
Oh, okay.
I said, you better. Of course, for a calendar day, it's in Every Event of the Year, but I said that's going to be the last poem in my Pharaoh Memes book, too, so I might as well include that in there. So I guess this first one is called Our Color, Our Gender, Our Creed. There is a house inside of me. It's a house with a rich heritage, brimming with the knowledge of how our souls have flourished and how it can all be so quickly taken away. There is a house inside of me that has had to shut down to hide everything away because those who didn't look like me decided that I was nothing and treated me accordingly. There is a house inside of me. Its pulse has an infectious rhythm that we've had to stifle to hide from your generic white bread world. We only let it out when we're alone to save us from your madness. There is a house inside of me. I've hidden it away. I've sealed it up and placed it deep within, brimming with my history and my future. And I don't let it out when people can't think of me as human. There is a house inside of me. I've put boards over the windows to save myself from your storm. With your wrath, I've learned to not fight back, only because my captor won't let me. There is a house inside of me, and this house will stand strong, even after you have raped me, beaten me, tortured me, tried to kill me, treated me as nothing. But you were so wrong. There is a house inside of me, and what I want you to realize is that this house will outlast yours. Trust me. If your house is built on distrust and such blatant disrespect, your house is bound to collapse. Because after all this time, and after my wanting to fight, I have learned that passive resistance is only a part of my story. Because in these struggles, I have gained a wisdom and a connection that is beyond this house inside of me, beyond this sharing, this inquisitive mentality. So I want you to remember, this house is a simple symbol for all like me, and for those not like me too. Because I have a dream that everyone who has suffered like this, and even those who have not, should share their stories with all of the world, no matter our color, our gender, our creed. This is my dream, because this is how we truly grow. I feel weird for applause, but thank you. But,
you're welcome.
And that was just in a day.
Nice.
In a day. Well, I was started by I'm going to say phrases that I feel like could be something. There is a house inside of me. It is empty. Or I think it was from some other rate, and I'm like, nah. But I like there's a house inside of me. What can I do with that? And I just shaved that in as a phrase, and I'm like, I'm gonna go. But you look for cues for ideas like that, and
right?
Where
Yes.
that kind of stuff framed.
Yes.
So most definitely.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. It was really great.
Well, no
So
problem.
every day of the year, are you still doing events of the year?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Today I wrote about a poet who this is my thing for today. There was a poet who was born in the 1800s and died in 1962, I believe.
Wow.
Edith, I cannot remember her name. She's a British poet. She, I think people looked at her like she was an outsider trying to fit in, blah blah blah. She never married. She ended up spending a lot of time with a gay man, and I think his partner at some point. But she didn't, just never married. But the thing was, some of her writings were actually really, really strong, and those were the good tests of what she was as a person. If you think that she was a poser or whatever, you know. So I wrote about that today, and I haven't shared it with anyone, and I don't have it on me.
Oh, that's all right. That's
It's on
okay.
my
No,
laptop,
no. I'm glad
because-
to hear that you're still writing.
Because that will be reserved for volume 2 of every event.
Every
of the year.
event of the year. Cool.
And they come up with the craziest things. Some of them, I know I've got a thing in here that I wasn't planning to share with you. National Sword Swallowing Day.
Yes.
National. I mean,
Yes, I love that.
The
It's
strangest thing. I'm
so
like,
bizarre.
well, let's go with that.
Who
and see
would
what we
ever
come up with.
think?
And I even took a photo of myself with one of my blades. I'm like, if you place it like this, it looks like this long blade is going down my throat. It's not, but
Yeah, right,
it'll be
it's
a
an
good
illusion.
thing for my Instagram
Sure.
image, you know,
Yeah.
for listing a poem. So yeah, but the thing is, I think you have known me that I look for challenges, and I know a number of years back, I decided, because I was looking for a challenge, and I didn't think of writing a poem for every day of the year, I thought to try to write a poem. And I'm like, well, should I do something for every element of the periodic table and be all science geeky of me? I'm like, or should I do something for every book in the Bible? And I'm like, I don't want to take on that Bible thing. And so I started doing research. And actually, when I started this year, I was like, come up with stuff for, and I'm like, all right, I can't think of anything. I'm going to start going with the Bible. And guess what? There are a lot of books in Genesis. So you write a piece about Cain and Abel. You write a piece. I mean, there's so many, and I think I'm like 30 something, and I'm like, I'm gonna start looking at holidays because I don't know if I'm gonna be able to go through and do all of that. I don't think my brain can handle that much stuff at once. But the funny thing is, Avram, Robin Fine's husband, had suggested me because Mr. Chemist Man knew that I wrote a book a few years back for every element of the periodic table, back when some of the elements didn't have names. They were still unanoctium and unum septium and Latin names that had no names yet. But he said, hey, there's a contest for doing Twitter-length poems. I'm like, yay, I'll do Twitter-length poems for every element. And I didn't realize it was only the first 3 I sent in that would count, which I just did some hydrogen ones that I thought meant nothing. But I'm like, well, I'll still keep going. And somebody from the agency and the Sen Mag, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, were like, hey, would you link with us so we can keep getting your feeds? And I'm like, all right, I guess I'm gonna have to keep working on it, because I'm only up to, I think, 37 right now in my Twitter length poems for that. But I start trying to come up with other things to do, and I'm like, sometimes I'll get 1 in a day, sometimes I'm like, I'm whipping through 3 elements, or 3 for phosphorus, because there's red phosphorus, white phosphorus, and phosphorus in general. And so it's like, let's go. And you've got fewer than, 280. How many characters is that now? Since I have to tag it with links to the places, I'm like, I have to limit how much I can say, what I can say. So
right.
it becomes a fun challenge. But just another one of the ways, I guess, I'm pushing myself into.
That's good.
So,
yes, it's great. It's great.
because if you just do nothing, then you stagnate.
Absolutely.
And so
Yes.
you come up with creative different ways. And even though I did these periodic table ones, somebody suggested this link, and I'm like, okay, now I've got like 3 about iron that I'm throwing, and coming up with all these different ideas. Or I hear somebody talking. I was at my favorite, and I don't drink much now, but I come back to Chicago and I go to Laschitz, which is a good German bar restaurant, and somebody there would be talking about making filters for cigarettes and how they wind them up so tightly that if you pulled out a sheet of the stuff that makes the filters, you pull it out like 30 feet and let go and go and snap right back in the spot because it's that tightly wound. It's like,
wild.
Really?
That's crazy.
And tobacco leaves are not just tobacco leaves. They actually mash all of the stuff from a tobacco leaves parts into a pulp, and they make paper sheets out of it. And then they chop that up and roll that up, and that's how they make cigarettes. I'm like, what? You know, but this is the way you can get it all smooth,
Right.
and because you don't know what's in different leaves and stuff, and you can get a consistency. Look at me talking about all the cool things that cigarette companies do to make
cigarettes are so bad for you.
but it was just fascinating to learn about these things. So I think that is an iron thing when talking about, you know, like, why don't I take that avenue? Because that's the weird stuff you don't think of.
Right.
Why would you think about how you make roll cigarette leaves or what's in the filter? You know, so you know, you take little snippets like that and like, how can I put that into something? I guess.
Yeah,
so.
I gotcha. Yeah. Good.
So,
Good.
and that might become a book of Twitterverse periodic table of poetry thing. We'll see.
Sure.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Sounds great.
But yeah.
And Avram to be a part of that's kind of cool that he's part of that story. Now he was talking to me about that they needed children to submit poems for
some
chemistry.
sort of contest thing. Yeah.
He's got some sort of a thing going on. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
And
so I'm like, oh man, I gotta look it up so I can let the world know.
Yeah.
Via WZRD where you can submit your abstract science geeky poetry, kids.
I believe I heard him reading at that bonus.
Oh yes,
Beach Post thing, contest winning or second place, third place pieces from kids.
Right.
About how you did for making paper. Was it something with paper? I think so.
One of them, yeah.
There was at least one of them. But it's like, how do you do these different elements and what the kids would come up with?
Yeah, they were really cute.
So definitely.
So good. Okay, well, you're gonna read another poem for us then.
Well. Okay, yes'm, I surely agree. I was trying to look for shorter pieces for you, but I think I'm just going to open up to this one because this was on Nature Photography Day, and it's called Orange Clouds and Blood Red Sunsets, and this is from the book Every Event of the Year, Volume 1, January through June. It is quite a collector's item.
Oh, yes. And where can we get this?
You can get it through Amazon.
Oh, through Amazon.
And I think for being over 200
Scars
pages.
Publications.
Scars Publications has
We're not going to be talking about money, though. We're just telling people to look it up.
But it's just a bargain for the size.
Bargain. It's
How
a
can you go
beautiful
wrong?
That's right.
How could you go wrong? Especially with this many pieces. And if you're wondering what happened on your birthday, there's a very good chance that your birthday, if it's in the first half of the year, is mentioned somewhere in this book.
That's nice.
The table of contents, and I just lost the page for the poem, but the table of contents lists things off of, oh, here's a day, here's an event, here's a poem, here's a page.
Neat.
And some of the things are, multiple things on one day that happened or whatnot. There are a number of things on April Fool's Day, I believe. But I won't read anything from April Fool's Day.
Okay.
Because, people make their jokes about April Fools, and we'll just leave it at that.
Yes.
And within the book, I've got the names of the holidays, but I don't have the dates. So somewhere in the first half of the year was Nature Photography Day, and I had written this piece called Orange Clouds and Blood Red Sunsets. My years of photography schooling in college was designed to prep me for the photojournalism, catching the action for the big reported story. And that camera is an extension of my right arm. I'd be ready at a moment's notice to swing that camera up to my eyes when the time was right. And I may be no Ansel Adams recording the speed and the altitude and the longitude for photos, but with this catching of moment mentality ingrained into my head, I'd stumble upon nature scenes I now have to share with the rest of the world. It's an impulse that when you see something that's so breathtaking that you only thought you could share it with the world, like dormant trees laden with snow at a creek at an overpass reflecting the cloud-filled sky, or orange clouds creating a one-of-a-kind mystery at the sky only you can decipher. Then catch the sun through clouds on a rainy day, or in blood-red sunsets over Lake Pontchartrain, or catch that instant the sun peeks out, seconds after a total eclipse. See the sun setting from 50,000 feet in the air and capture the divide between day and night from on high. Catch bare footprints, shadows in the snow. Get on a boat and go to the water and capture icebergs and glaciers, or all of the shards of ice like glass scattered across the water that make the sea look like a crossword puzzle with the pieces scattered about. Find long trails along mountainsides, or stop when you see a massive field of giant sunflowers. Don't forget the pollinating bee you may see on dying daisies, or go back to those intense blue waters breaking on the shoreline. Wait, what about that moss hanging down from plantation trees on the southern United States and remind you of trees brimming with life in the highlands or the bamboo forests in Puerto Rico? Because from ice to snow to lakes or ponds, that nature is so brimming with life. So, journalist, photographer, stop looking for people for the action sometimes. Nature has so much majestic, breathtaking, mind-blowing action to share, and in an instant, their moment is gone too, and that is worth sharing.
Yes, 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 yes. And I think of those beautiful photographs you showed me that you'd taken like in the Galapagos Islands.
I took pictures in the Galapagos Islands.
And you were in Antarctica too with the penguins.
That was crazy. And people talk about going for a polar plunge here in Chicago. And I never did that while living here. I'm like, that's just silly. And then Rahm Emanuel started becoming mayor, and he was like, I'm going to jump in like everybody else. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. That's crazy. But when we were on a boat, and it was the first boat in 2017-2018 season, they had a thing that you could do a polar plunge. And I'm like, oh, I have to do this. Because how can I not? I mean, if I'm going to be there, I might as well do something as stupid as this. And it's so much colder. And it's saltwater, too, when you're jumping into the Southern Ocean, which that totally didn't occur to me when I got some salt up my nose or whatever.
Right.
But the weird thing is, because your body is shocked from the cold, I didn't feel cold at all. I thought it was totally fine. I was like, really? This isn't so bad. Let me just find where the surface is.
Sure.
So I can get out of here. But it was amazing. And that was the same thing from that one. They had an option because we were on a boat. If you wanted to, you could camp. If you wanted to actually camp on Antarctica instead of sailing. I'm like, well, how can you not? I mean, if you've got that option. And I said, I'm going to need a tall sleeping bag. And they said, oh, you won't need that. He looks at me as I'm a female. You won't need a BS. It was too small for me.
Ah!
and my husband, who is 5 inches taller than me, they gave him a tall bag, and it had a regular sleeping bag in it. So he had one that was too small for him. And we didn't have a tent. We had what they called a bivvy stack. And anybody who knows what that is, it is like a condom to wrap around your... It's so tiny. It's just like having an extra layer of fabric to wrap around your sleeping bag. There's nothing to it. It's like, this is freezing. We're putting my hands between my legs trying to warm up for the...
Sure.
One thing that my husband John found amazing, and I remember it, like, he says to me, it was 2:30 in the morning. I remember it. You hear a rumbling. We're on a mountain. There was an avalanche. There was 150 yards away falling. I was just going, man, that's loud. I wouldn't open my eyes or move, right? And he looked out and he's like, this is amazing. This is absolutely amazing. This is so cool to watch. And afterward he said, my goodness, I had a camera. Why didn't I think take a photo of any of this. Why didn't I take a photo of any of this? It was absolutely amazing.
Wow.
But we lived through it, and it didn't come near us. Although there were lots of little icebergs from the avalanche that we had to navigate through to get back to a boat because it collapsed into the ocean.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I think I might have one little piece in here that was for National Penguin Day about that, although I don't know if I would share that with the audience.
National Penguin?
There was a National Penguin Day. Where on earth is that? And it was a piece called Ocean Sculpture Dive, and it's on page 24. Penguin Awareness Day, which was January 20th. And I totally, that's on page 26. All right, I have to go find it in my book because I wasn't planning on it. And it's so much more fun to share it with people and do the action of what these penguins would be doing.
Sure.
Because there would be penguins.
Aww.
I'm showing our phenomenal DJ photo of a penguin jumping into the Southern Ocean. This is Ocean Sculpture Dive. It's short. The Gentoo penguins run down the mountain to the rocky edge overlooking the Southern Ocean. They get into a single file line at the end. One jumps in, then another, then another, then a dozen more. The last penguin in the line gets to that edge after all the other penguins have dove into the Southern Ocean. The last penguin steps back and forth on his feet in place, turns around, looks at the mountain, turns back to the water, steps in place twice, rocks in place once, looks back again, and then turns to the salt water and dives in.
Oh, nice.
It's a cute little one.
Nice. Oh.
So yeah, there are things for crazy things about jumping into the ocean and such, and all sorts of things. I don't know how to be able to go on about stuff, but I happen to actually happen upon, and it's an Eat Your Vegetables Day.
Oh, yes.
I don't know what
Great.
day. Because only the table of contents does it say what day of the year that was. But this was an Eat Your Vegetables Day in a row.
Eat Your Vegetables
called
Day.
Eat Your Vegetables, Be a Proper Girl. People who don't know me say I should be a more proper girl. They see me borrowing a bong in Nashville or drinking absinthe in New Orleans and picking the strongest beers at every brewery. They smugly say, if I were a proper girl, I would eat my vegetables. So I think back to all the vegetables I eat every single day, and then I wonder how proper it is of them to have others mass produce and mass slaughter living creatures to satiate their daily desires for steak and bacon. As a vegetarian for decades, I wonder who defines what's proper, coming from those who promote death every meal. Because I eat my vegetables, and I still have fun.
That's great.
Well, you have to throw in messages, and I think you
Right,
can.
yeah,
Right?
that's great. That's the thing to do.
So, wow, this one is Celebrating of the Senses Day. It's another short one here that I had thought you might find fun. And this one is called Bronze Sculptures Will Crumble to Pieces.
Ooh.
Bum, bum, bum.
Sculptures.
Will crumble to pieces. Now you'll understand what it says when I read this poem for you, celebrating the Census Day. Once visiting the Smithsonian Art Gallery in Washington, D.C., I told friends about enjoying the world through all of your senses. We're used to sight, but I mentioned taste, smell, and touch as we proceeded to walk into a room with a bronze statue of the crucifix propped up against the wall. An interesting surface, one friend thought, and so she touched the cold, smooth metal. Of course, that's when a guard from another room ran in, yelling, "Hey, don't touch that!" But the deed was done. The guard is probably still fearing that the bronze sculpture will crumble to pieces because it was grazed by her hand once. My suggestion to you, feel the textures of the food you eat as it slides down your throat. When you walk outside today, deeply inhale. Smell everything from the foliage in full bloom, or even the smell of the exhaust permeating from the streets outside. Run your hand along the bark of a tree or a blade of grass. Run your hand along I said that already, or through the blade of grass, or even in the concrete that the commuters walk down every single day. Note the shapes of the clouds in the sky. Think about how the wind feels from outside or from your indoors fan against your skin. And most importantly, the next time you hug someone, hold them tight. And today, feel everything you can with all of your senses.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you're looking for all sorts of, things from different events and such. So, I don't know if you would like more or if you would.
Yeah,
like
I've been working with my students on being keen observers of what's happening in the world, because everybody's sucked into their phone.
Oh,
and they're
my
just
gosh.
missing out on everything that's going on around them.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm my phone instead. So, and that happens to all of us. I mean, and I would sit there and do something, and my husband's like, "All right, I'm going to look at my phone," and then I'm done. I'm looking, and he's still working on his phone, and he's still working on his phone. And I'm like, we are in public. We could be talking to you. He's like, "Well, you are working on something." And I'm like, "All right, well, I'm done. Stop doing what you're doing." But that's what happens when you each go into your own world for doing stuff. He would get mad. He just walked in and stuck his tongue out at me. Although half the time, as of recently, he's having to do work on that because I'm busy looking to see what I might be able to read, say for instance, on WZRD
Yes,
radio.
yes,
so I'm like,
yes.
I've got to get all this stuff taken care of.
Yes,
Exactly.
absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, and then I think I even wrote something about that for New Year's, which does not appear in these books, about how we would go out, and he had mentioned that we were at a bar once, just talking to each other, and there were two men sitting at a table, just the two of them. They were both looking at their phones, and one would do something, and then they look up at the other one and go, "Hey, that's not funny." Like they're
What?
making jokes and
Like
cracks
they're
to each
having
other
a conversation over the phone
when they
across
could
the
just
table.
speak to each other.
So talking
When they
to each
could
other.
just speak to each other like normal human beings do. I'm like, what? What on earth was that? So, and we all have that. And so I think we were hanging out in Austin last year for New Year's. I think New Year's was a Saturday to Sunday, or a Friday to Saturday. No, it was a Saturday to Sunday. So New Year's Eve, we spent the day going out during the day. Might as well, weird thing. So we went down to Rainy Street, which is a popular place to go. And I would tell people I went there, like, "You went there?" And I'm like, it's just one thing for a Saturday afternoon, why not? And I would walk into a place and we'd see people walk up and, "Excuse me, do you have any games going on here on the TVs?" And they're like, "No, this is," and they're like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "Of course, because the point is to go out in public and pay attention to anything other than the people you came with."
Sure, yeah, right? Is that true?
But in fact, I had said to one of them, because I think it was a container bar or something, I cannot remember the name of it, but the names on it looked like elements and squares. And I said, I was just curious what that was. I'm like, because I had written poems for every element in the periodic table, and the bouncer is there, and there's a guard there, and it's like, "Can you read us something?" And I'm like, "Right now?" And I'm like, all right, because I have things on my phone. I'm like, well, I can come up with a haiku. And I think this was for arsenic. And I said, "You ready?" And it goes to the effect of this. In pre-penicillin days, arsenic was used to cure syphilis.
Ta-da!
and they just looked at each other, and the one guy goes, "Well, did